तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ते भूरिता जनाः. O Lord, your words, like sweet nectar, refresh the afflicted. Your words, which poets have sung in verses, vanquish the sins of the worldly. Blessed are they who hear of you, and blessed indeed are they who speak of you. How great is their reward. We are continuing with the study of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Today, we are doing chapter 20, Rules for Householders and Monks. Sunday, 9th March 1884. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room at Dakshineshwar with many devotees. Among them were Manimallik, Mahendra Kaviraj, Balaram, Yam, Bhavanath, Rakhal, Latu, and Harish. The master's injured arm was in a splint. In spite of the injury, he was constantly absorbed in samadhi or instructing the devotees. Sri Ramakrishna tripped over and fell down and injured his arm in February. Manimallik and Bhavanath referred to the exhibition which was then being held near the Asiatic Museum. They said, many Maharajas have sent precious articles to the exhibition, gold couches and the like. It's worth seeing. Master to the devotees, with a smile. Yes, you gain much by visiting those things. You realize that those articles of gold and other things sent by Maharajas are mere trash. That is a great gain in itself. See, according to Sri Ramakrishna, the gold is mere trash. He says, when you see all these things, then you realize they are worthless. And he gives an example for that. When I used to go to Calcutta with Hriday, he would show me the Viceroy's palace and say, look, uncle, there is a Viceroy's palace with the big columns. You can see the big columns. When the British were ruling, at that time, Calcutta was the capital of the East British Empire in British India, and the Viceroy's residence. You can see the big columns. The mother revealed to me that they were merely clay bricks laid one top of another. If you look at it, however beautiful the building may be, it's nothing but brick and mortar. The beauty outside, but what's the essence? It's only brick and mortar, there's nothing. If you remove the plaster and everything, you won't say it is so beautiful. Just like human body. Inside, just the skin cover. Everything is the same. And it is all worthless trash. God and his splendor. God alone is real. The splendor has but a 2 days existence. So we see all the time the splendor, and we are fascinated by the splendor of the God's creation. We see in this world, but the splendor is only for its momentary existence. It's only for 2 days. Today it is there, tomorrow it's gone. However great a person is, high in position, power, popularity, it's gone in a minute, gone in a day, a few short days' time. But we are so completely deluded by this splendor that we forget to look for the real honor of this splendor, God. Sri Ramakrishna continues, the magician and the magic all become speechless with wonder at the magic. But it is all unreal. The magician alone is real. Now, what do you mean by real? Real is something that does not change, which remains all the time without any change, that is real. All the things in the world is constantly changing. The whole world is continuously changing. So how can you say the world is real? The world is apparently real from our standpoint, but from the higher standpoint, the world is unreal because it's constantly changing, continuously changing. The rich man and his garden. People see only the garden. They should look for the rich owner. So all this great show of this universe, however great it is, we should look for the one behind this show. The conversation turned to the museum. Master to the devotees. I visited the museum once. I was shown fossils. A whole animal has become stone. Just see what an effect has been produced by company. Likewise, by constantly living in the company of a holy man, one verily becomes holy. Holy company is one of the important discipline on the spiritual path. We wonder what is the need of holy company. Holy company is needed to awaken in us the desire to be free. When we see these truths which are mentioned in the scriptures, manifested in the lives of the holy people, or verified in the lives of the holy people, then we feel like taking to the spiritual path. Otherwise, what is the guarantee? They say if you do these disciplines, you will get this result. Then we will ask, has anybody got it? Is there any proof? Then we say, yes, look at this life of the holy people. So associating with the holy people, we get the truths of the scriptures verified. And that helps us to take or awaken in us the desire to follow this spiritual path. Again, a spiritual idea is aroused by association. Through association of ideas, we think of many things. A true devotee does not see anything but God. So, because his mind is fully occupied with God, he or she will be seeing the presence of God everywhere. Whatever he sees, he associates with God. That's the case with Sri Ramakrishna. He was in the museum, he saw the fossils. And then he's saying he's associating with holy company. We have, in the earlier chapter, we have mentioned this. Sri Ramakrishna says he was taken to the zoo, and there he saw the lion. Immediately, his mind was reminded of Mother Durga riding the lion. So he went into ecstasy. Every single thing reminds him of God. Another time, he had been taken to the Maidan, the big playground, ground, to see the balloon ascension. There he saw a young boy leaning against a tree. The boy was leaning in such a way that his body was bent in three places. And immediately, the picture of Sri Krishna came to his mind. Sri Krishna playing his flutes, leaning against a tree. And he went into ecstasy. Everything reminds of God. That's the association of ideas. And that happens when or for us ordinary people, that happens when we seek the company of holy people. And also by thinking of this holy association or thinking about God, the qualities of God, we imbibe those. Our mind takes that shape. as we always say, the mind has got its capacity or the unique nature of taking the shape and color of the ideas that we put in the mind. So if we fill our mind with the idea of Sri Ramakrishna, the mind will take the shape of Sri Ramakrishna. If you put in the mind the idea of Sri Krishna, the mind will take the form of Sri Krishna. If you put the idea of Jesus Christ, the mind takes a shape. And even physically, we can see those. In the life of Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint Francis of Assisi, we see they were meditating on the stigmata of Jesus. And actually, those stigmata were manifested in their body, the hands and the feet. The wounds of the nails came on there. So this is the association of ideas. Keeping the company of the holy, physically, externally, even, or meditating that is also holy company. Sri Ramakrishna continues. They started talking about the idea of sin. So Sri Ramakrishna says, in the beginning of spiritual life, a man should think about sin and how to get rid of it. But when, through the grace of God, devotion and ecstatic love are awakened in his heart, then he altogether forgets virtue and sin. Then he leaves the scriptures and the injunctions far behind. Thoughts of repentance and penance do not bother him at all. It's like going to your destination along a winding river. This requires great effort and a long time. But when there is a flood all around, then you can go straight to your destination in a short time. Then you find the land lying under water, deep as a bamboo pole. In the beginning of spiritual life, one goes by a roundabout way. One has to suffer a great deal. But the path becomes very easy when ecstatic love is awakened in the heart. It is like going over the paddy field after the harvest is over. You may then walk in any direction. Before the harvest, you had to go along the winding walk. But now you can walk in any direction. There may be stubble in the field, but you will not be hurt by it if you walk with your shoes on. Just so, an aspirant does not suffer if he has discrimination, dispassion, and faith in the Guru's words. Talking about sin and repentance. In the beginning of a spiritual life, a person should think about sin and how to get rid of it. So the scriptures give us the do's and don'ts, what's to be done, the disciplines to be followed, and what are the things to be avoided, the do's and don'ts, the commandments. Patanjali speaks about yama and niyama. Follow these principles, follow these virtues or disciplines. Non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing. So these are all don'ts. Don't kill, don't harm another person, don't tell lies, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't receive gifts, yama. Then niyama, practice purity, cleanliness, contentment, austerity, dependence on God. So do's and don'ts are given for the beginner. They are in the Patanjali's 8 disciplines. Yama and niyama are the number 1 and 2, the beginning. So these disciplines are for the beginners. Once they practice this for some time, then they get established in that. then it becomes natural, that it becomes their nature. You don't have to consciously do. They won't be doing anything other than this discipline. They cannot go out of this. It is like these disciplines are like the fence around a sapling. And a sapling, we have to protect from cattle eating. But once the sapling grows up, becomes a big tree, then there is no need for a fence around it. Even if some animal come and hit it, nothing will happen to it, because the tree has well established, grown, the roots have gone deep, nothing can shake it. And even the scriptures becomes useless afterwards. There's no more need. An example Shri Krishna says is in the Gita, when there is water everywhere, do we need a well to pull up the water, to take water? Water is everywhere. When you see God everywhere, then there's no need for scriptures. Scriptures becomes useless. Then there's the use of the scriptures is over. Useless in the sense that their function is over. And Swami Vivekananda says that Vedanta is the only system that says that you cannot realize God with the help of scriptures. They only show the way. And you have to go beyond the books, beyond the scriptures. Scriptures, Vedas don't give you realization, you go beyond the Vedas. It's the same with all scriptures. You hold on to scriptures, you don't progress. That is why Swamiji says it's good to be born in a church, but not to die there. That means you have to outgrow it. The scriptures, rituals, practices, they are in the beginning. You need it. But once you get established in that, go forward. Don't get stuck there. That's what the idea. They are in the beginning, you need it. Sri Ramakrishna gives an example. A person got a letter from a relative in the village asking for some things. So he misplaced the letter and he was going to the shop and he wanted to see what are the things that they asked. So he searched and at last found the letter, looked at it, or you buy a piece of cloth, some sweets, etc., and send it to us. Now he know what is written in the letter, what they need. Now let the use of the letter is over, finished. Now all he has to do is go and get those things. The scriptures are just like that, the shopping list. We don't hold on to the shopping list to go and buy the things. We had to do the discipline, follow the disciplines prescribed in the scriptures and realize God. So in the beginning, all this has got its value. It's not valueless. For the beginning, for the beginner, in the early days of spiritual life, the scriptures, rituals, worship, practices, they are all got their value. But don't get stuck there. You go forward. And as you go forward, then you overcome them. You go beyond them. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna says here, when through the grace of God, devotion and ecstatic love are awakened in his heart, then he altogether forgets virtue and sin. Then he leaves the scripture and their injunctions far behind. When he is forgetting himself, even the body, in thought of God, where is the thought of repentance and penance? Nothing. He has gone far beyond that. We see that in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna started worship of Mother Kali in the temple. He started his life in Calcutta as a priest of Mother Kali. But soon he became so absorbed in the thought of Divine Mother that his formal worship he could not do anymore. it came to a stage that he started offering flowers. He went on doing that. The flowers in the tray over, but still he repeated the act because he is no longer conscious of what he's doing. Or waving the lamp. Went on waving the lamp has burned, the wick has burned down. Still he continued. Or waving the fan, on and on. So the temple officials reported all this to the proprietor and they said, let him do whatever he wants. Because Mathur Babu, the proprietor, understood that he is really intoxicated with divine love. Wherever he looked, Sri Ramakrishna saw only the Divine Mother. One day he was sitting in the temple. It was time for the food offering to the Divine Mother. The food has come to be offered. And at that time, a cat walked past. And Sri Ramakrishna took the food offering and fed the cat. What a sacrilegious thing to do. And this was reported. And Mathur Babu, the proprietor, said, don't do anything, I'll come and see for myself. So this is Sri Ramakrishna's state of mind at that time. Yatraiva mano madiyam tatraiva tava surupam. Wherever my mind goes, I see only your form. Nothing else is seen. And then Sri Ramakrishna says, giving the example of that paddy field, he says, after the harvest, you can go and walk in any direction. There may be stubble in the field, but you will not be hurt by it if you walk with your shoes on. In the spiritual path, when you go forward, there may be pitfalls, but you won't get really hurt if you are protected by the shoes. What is the shoes here in the spiritual path? Discrimination, dispassion, and faith in God. Discrimination, viveka. Viveka is reasoning out what is real and what is unreal. God alone is real and everything else is unreal. So why should we hold on to these unreal things? That is discrimination. Reason out and then give up. Through reasoning, give up the unreal things. Give up means not need. Sri Ramakrishna always tells those devotees, householders, for them, giving up mentally. We are holding on to things, attachment. Give up the attachment. Sri Krishna says in the Gita again and again, give up attachment. He is not asking in the Gita, if you study, you see Sri Krishna is asking Arjuna to fight, to do work, but without attachment. That's the only thing he is asking you to give up. Give up attachment. Do all your things, have everything, but give up attachment. That is through discrimination, give up attachment. Discrimination, then comes dispassion, detachment. That dispassion or detachment comes through discrimination only. Only when you reason out, only with viveka, we get vairagya. Vairagya, detachment comes through discrimination, reasoning out that all these things that we see is not really real. They are apparently real. In our day-to-day life, they are real. But they are, in the absolute sense, they are not real. The only real thing is God. That idea comes through viveka, through discrimination. And then faith in Guru, faith in the words of the Guru. Absolute faith. That is also very important in spiritual path. Having faith in the words of the Guru. Absolute. Whatever our spiritual teacher has asked us to do it implicitly. Follow the instructions of the teacher implicitly. And have faith like a child. Sri Ramakrishna says, have the faith in the words of the Guru like a child's faith in the mother. Whatever the mother says, the child just believes. absolute faith in the words of the mother. We should have faith in the words of the Guru like that. In a spiritual, whatever the instructions Guru has given, follow it implicitly. Sri Ramakrishna then explained the sacred word Om and the true knowledge of Brahman and the state of mind after the attainment of Brahmajnana. Master. The sound Om is Brahman. The rishis and sages practice austerity to realize that sound Brahman. After attaining perfection, one hears the sound of this eternal word rising spontaneously from the navel. What will you gain? Some sages ask, by merely hearing this sound? You hear the roar of the ocean from a distance. By following the roar, you can reach the ocean. As long as there is the roar, there must also be the ocean. By following the trail of Om, you attain Brahman, of which the word is a symbol. That Brahman has been described by the Vedas as the ultimate goal. Om, it's the most sacred, most ancient mantra of Hinduism. Om signifies God or Brahman. And Om is also known by the term Pranava. It's also known as Pranava. Now, Om contains three sounds. A, U, Ma. In English, we write as A-U-M, but it is not A-U-M, it is actually A, U, Ma. And three letters, so some people explain it as A stands for creation, U for preservation, and Ma for destruction or dissolution. Again, A, U, Ma stands for the three worlds, heaven, earth, and the nether worlds. This letter or word Om contains the whole sound world. Swami Vivekananda explained this as follows. I'll just reading from what Swamiji has said. Om, the first letter A is the root sound, the key, and pronounced without touching any part of the tongue or palate. See, when you pronounce Om, you start with A. A comes from the root, from the palate, from the root of the mouth, and it's pronounced without touching any part of the tongue or palate. A. Then represent the last sound of the series, being produced by closed lips. Om. So comes produced by closed lips. And U rolls from the very root to the end of the sounding board or the mouth. Thus, Om represents the whole phenomena of the sound producing mechanism. Starting from A, it contains the whole range of sounds in that. Nothing is outside everything, all the sound is produced by our mouth. And here in Om, the sound starts from the throat to the lips. Outside of that range, there is no sound is produced. So all the sounds that we can make, any being can make, is contained in this Om. And everything that exists in the world is represented by words. And all the words are produced by the mouth. So everything in this universe is represented by Om. The Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, and the other scriptures all speak highly of Om. Upanishads equate Om with Brahman. As Sri Ramakrishna here said, Om is sound Brahman. And he says by following Om, you reach Brahman. And the example Sri Ramakrishna gives is, you hear the roar of the ocean, and you walk in that direction where you hear the sound, you reach the ocean. The sound will take you in that direction. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, among all the words, I am Om. And he says further that if a person chanting Om and fixing the mind on God leaves the body, that's at the time of death, thinking of God and chanting Om, person dies, then he will reach the highest truth. According to Patanjali, Om is the symbol of God, and one can attain samadhi by repetition or meditation on Om. Another thing we say, God is one, but sages call it by various names. So all these names of different gods are all contained in Om. That is why all the mantras of the various gods and goddesses, every mantra, every single mantra has got Om. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namo Narayana, Om Namo Vasudevaya. Everything has got Om. Without Om, there is nothing. And by following the trail of Om, you attain Brahman, of which the word is the symbol. Even in the sound, they say it is going on eternally in the atmosphere. NASA has done the study and found that the vibration of sun rays, the sound is an Om. So we will hear a bit of chanting of Om. all the mantras, as I said earlier, have got Om. And all the sacred acts, they start with uttering Om. Even the Advaita Vedantis, who believe in the formless, attributeless Brahman, they meditate on that. They also chant Om, because Om is the sound Brahman. It's the only thing it indicating Brahman, Om. But such wish, Brahman is described, that Brahman has been described in the Vedas as the ultimate goal. But such vision is not possible as long as you are conscious of your ego. The vision of Brahman is not possible as long as ego is there. I, that feeling is there. When we say I, I'm identifying with this body, mind, and thing. That as long as that is there, no, you can't have the realization of Brahman. A man realizes Brahman only when he feels neither I nor you, neither one nor many. Even one, no, you want to get to go beyond one. That is why we're talking about Brahman. Upanishad says not two. You cannot say one. Nothing, Brahman, that supreme reality cannot be pinpointed. This, no, only not this. And then Sri Ramakrishna continues. Think of the sun and 10 jars filled with water. The sun is reflected in each jar. At first, you see one real sun and 10 reflected ones. If you break 9 of the jars, there will remain only the real sun and one reflection. Each jar represents a jiva. Following the reflection, one can find the real sun. 10 jars filled with water, so we get 10 reflected suns. Pour out the water from one jar, so 9 jars of water, 9 reflected sun, and the real sun. One by one, you pour out the water, and just one remain. So one reflected sun and the real sun. We are like the jar. Our mind, if it is pure, clean, without any disturbance, it reflects Brahman. So that reflected identity is called the jiva. Each jar represents a jiva. Following the reflection, one can find the real sun. Through the individual soul, one can reach the supreme soul. Through spiritual discipline, the individual soul can get the vision of the supreme soul. What remains when the last jar is broken cannot be described. What remains after the last jar is broken? We, from the physical side, say only the real sun remains. But when, for the jiva, who will describe that reflection is gone, only the reality, Brahman alone remains, then who will describe what is there? The person is not there. It's like the case of the salt doll getting dissolved in the water. Then who will describe what is who will say how deep the ocean is? The moment it stepped into the water, it started dissolving. Completely gone. When you realize Brahman, the jiva becomes one with Brahman. Brahma with Brahmaiva Bhavade. Knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. There is no two. Only if there is two, another who can say describe. So when you become one with that, how can you describe what it is? That's why Sri Ramakrishna says, what remains in the last jar is broken, cannot be described. The jiva at first remains in a state of ignorance. He is not conscious of God, but of the multiplicity. He sees many things around him. On attaining knowledge, he becomes conscious that God dwells in all beings. First, we see many things. That's our state. We see all the variety. And at present, we think that God is somewhere far away. So there is God is separate, we are separate, we see all the different entities, different things. On attaining knowledge, he becomes conscious that God dwells in all beings. That's one step forward. He realizes that God is in all beings. God dwells in all beings. God is not somewhere outside the universe, but God is in the universe. God dwells in all beings. Suppose a man has a thorn in the sole of his foot. He gets another thorn and takes out the first one. In other words, he removes the thorn of ajnana, ignorance, by means of the thorn of jnana, knowledge. So you have to remove the ignorance. How will you remove the ignorance? By bringing in knowledge. Ignorance, we see different things. God is separate, man is separate. The whole universe is separate. God is different from the whole universe. That is ignorance. When you get knowledge, when you attain knowledge, you see God is within all. God is the indweller of all creation, everything in the creation. That is knowledge. So you bring in that knowledge and remove the ignorance. Then Sri Ramakrishna goes one step further. On attaining Vijnana, he discards both thorns, knowledge and ignorance. So first, one thorn was there. You got a thorn on your foot. You take another thorn and remove the first thorn. To remove the first thorn, you need a second thorn. But once it is removed, you don't need the thorns anymore. You throw both away. So Sri Ramakrishna says, after attaining knowledge, you go beyond that. You don't hold on to the ignorance and knowledge. You remove the ignorance through knowledge and then go beyond that. But on attaining Vijnana, he discards both thorns, knowledge and ignorance. Then he talks intimately with God day and night. It is no mere vision of God. When you get Vijnana, wisdom, supreme knowledge, you become very close to God, intimate relation. In personal God, we have got many human relation we can attribute to God. Got very intimate, very close with God. Whereas knowledge, you keep a distance. God is indwelling the spirit of all, but you haven't got intimate relation with God. You don't know God very closely. He who has merely heard of milk is ignorant. He who has seen milk has knowledge. But he who has drunk milk and been strengthened by it has attained Vijnana. How simple Sri Ramakrishna's examples are. It's a very common thing everybody knows. Seen milk, we have seen it. Whether it is milk or some other white liquid, we don't know. It's ignorant. We are in a state of ignorance. But we have seen it, we have touched it. Now we know it's milk. We have got knowledge. But if you have drunk the milk and get nourished by it, then you have benefited, you have got Vijnana. You are strengthened by the milk, then you have attained Vijnana. Thus the master described his own state of mind to the devotees. He was indeed a Vijnani. Sri Ramakrishna. See, Vijnani sees everything as God. Through reasoning and spiritual practices, one attains the state of jnana, knowledge. The veil of ignorance is removed and knows that Brahman alone is real. The universe is of the manifestation. It's just a superimposition that knowledge comes. Superimposition on Brahman. Just like we see a snake on a piece of rope in a semi-darkness, or we see the mirage in a hot day far away, see the water on a hot surface. We know that it is not really there, but we see it. So we say it's not really real. It is superimposition. It is imposed on the something else. It is superimposition. That is knowledge. So we see then knowledge says this universe is superimposed on Brahman. That's knowledge. But when you come to the state of Vijnana, the Vijnani realizes that everything is nothing but Brahman. There is nothing other than Brahman. All this universe, it's only Brahman. Whether you are seeing it in the form of a tree or a house or a human being, it's nothing but Brahman. Whether when the ornaments are made of gold, it's nothing but gold. Different shapes, it can be a bangle, it can be a necklace, it can be a ring, but it is nothing but gold. The Vijnani sees only the gold, not the different shape. And even if you see the shape, he see behind the shape the gold which is present. Seeing God or Brahman with open eyes, not only in meditation. And the practical side of that realization is serving others. Because you see God present in all. Everything is nothing but God. That's what Sri Ramakrishna said, Shivajnane Jiva Seva. Serve others, knowing them to be nothing but God. Then you are not helping others, you are serving others. When you say, I'm helping other person, you are standing on a high pedestal and that person you are looking down and helping. No, you are serving because you are serving God. And that person's attitude is different. It's not a person who has attained Vijnana, the temperament is quite different from a person who has got knowledge. Sri Ramakrishna describes that because it's his own state of Vijnani. The master described his own state of mind to the devotees. He was indeed a Vijnani, master to the devotees. There is a difference between a sadhu endowed with jnana and one endowed with Vijnana. The jnani sadhu has a certain way of sitting. He twirls his mustache and asks the visitor, well, sir, have you any questions to ask? Because he is ready to instruct, he is giving knowledge to others. He has got that I feelings there. But the man who always sees God and talks to him intimately has an altogether different nature. He is sometimes like an inert thing, sometimes like a ghoul, sometimes like a child, and sometimes like a madman. When he is in samadhi, he becomes unconscious of the outer world and appears inert. And Sri Ramakrishna describes another place that at that time, even if a bird sit on his head, he wouldn't know. Or the snake slide through his body, he wouldn't know. It had really happened in Sri Ramakrishna's case. He says when he was, after his the experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, he remained for a long time in deep with the state of Samadhi, and birds used to sit on his head and try peck. He wouldn't know. He had no idea. Appears completely inert. Even in the Dakshineswar, the devotees, when they're coming, often he goes into Samadhi, and towards the end of his life, when he was in Kausipur garden, once when he was in Samadhi, the doctor who is treating Sri Ramakrishna, Dr. Mahendralal Sarkar, was present at that time. And seeing Sri Ramakrishna in Samadhi, he wanted to test. No sign of breath, no breathing, no, completely stopped, no pulse, no breathing, nothing. Then Dr. Sarkar could not believe how this just like a dead body. So he put his finger into Sri Ramakrishna's open, half-closed eyes and touched the eyeball. No reaction, just like a dead body. So that's why he says, in Samadhi, he becomes unconscious of the outer world and appears inert. He sees everything to be full of Brahman consciousness. Therefore, he behaves like a ghoul. He is not conscious of the holy and the unholy. He does not observe any formal purity. When you see everything as Brahman, what is pure and what is impure, everything is Brahman only. There is nothing impure there. So he does not observe any ceremonial purity, formal purity. To him, everything is Brahman. He is not aware of filth as such. Again, he is like a madman. People notice his ways and actions and think of him as insane. It is case of what happened to Sri Ramakrishna. The people of the temple officials, temple workers, and the people in the Dakshineswar village, they all said, it's a mad Brahmin, mad priest. Again, he's like a madman. People notice his ways and actions and think of him as insane. Or sometimes he's like a child. No bondage, no shame, no hatred, no hesitation or the like. And Sri Ramakrishna describes one Novara Brahman who came to the Dakshineswar temple soon after the temple was opened or started there. And to all external appearances, he looked just a madman. Torn clothes, one foot, there's a slipper on one foot, the other foot, there's no slipper. And because of his appearance, they didn't allow him to eat in the dining hall with other pilgrims and devotees. So he didn't mind. He went to the garbage place where they throw the leaf plates after people eat and look for scraps in that rubbish bin, rubbish tip. Along, dogs were there, he pushed the dogs and looked for and took some scraps. But then Sri Ramakrishna says, but when he went to the Kali temple and chanted hymns, the whole place was vibrating with spiritual power. And Sri Ramakrishna, with his nephew Hriday and cousin Haladhari, he went to this man and recognizing him as an over of Brahman, not a madman. And he spoke to them of Brahman, the highest truth. But to the outsiders, he was just a madman. One reaches this state of mind after having the vision of God. It's not before that. This state of Vijnani comes after one have the vision of God. Till then, so you go step by step. First, we are in a state of ignorance. Then through study of scriptures, spiritual practices, the grace of the Guru, we attain jnana, knowledge, and then follow the instructions of the teacher and go further and further through God's grace and the grace of the Guru. If you attain the state of Vijnana, seeing Brahman everywhere, seeing God everywhere.
And follow me silently. Lord and Sovereign Master of the universe, in these few moments of silence, my heart yearns to commune with Thee. Please open my heart to the showers of the rays of your grace, that I may feel and experience Thy love and compassion. O Master of my life, Light of the universe, may I be able to see You shining in my heart ever and ever. The heart offered is the heart accepted. This heart of mine that I have offered at Your feet is waiting, waiting, waiting for Your vision. Closing the eyes, look into the center of the heart, the spiritual heart. The spiritual heart is the dwelling place of God in our physical system. It belongs to God. All other parts of the body are in our control. But the spiritual heart belongs to the Lord. When the heart is full of worldly concerns, the tumultuous waves of worldliness hide the face of God from our vision. Let us try to bring our feelings, thoughts, and attention away from the world and into the heart, where the Lord of the universe is awaiting our arrival. The presence of God is always experienced as light. Let us visualize that light today as a beautiful flame, golden orange flame. Not moving, steady, in beautiful, perfect shape, This flame, representing the presence of God, does not need any fuel to burn, does not emit any smoke from its burning, does not cast any shadow. When we look closer into the inside of the heart, we can see this wonderful golden orange flame emerging into our vision. Slowly bring your mind and thoughts onto the flame. It is there. It is there. We only have to look for it with attention. And a wonderful aura of golden orange brilliance is emerging out of the flame. And has filled our heart. Look closely. In the center of the heart is the flame. Surrounding it, all around in the heart, is that glorious light. Wonderful glow. Beautiful to experience. Filling the whole heart. Coming from the flame. Piercing the sides of the heart. The powerful, wonderful radiance coming from the flame, but cool, soothing, strengthening, has come out into the other parts of the body. Feel the cool flow of that energy emerging out of the heart, flowing into every part of the body. Feel it flowing slowly into the right leg, filling it up to the tips of the toes. The golden glow of energy is flowing into the left leg, filling it to the tips. The right arm is getting filled with that glorious brilliance. Radiance is now filling the left arm up to the tips of the fingers. The golden radiance coming out of the heart is flowing into all parts of the trunk of the body. And now it's flowing into the head, filling every part of it. The lobes of the ears up to the tip of the nose, Our whole body is now filled with that golden radiance. Coming from that wonderful flame of light, love, and life that has become visible. The presence of God become visible because of our yearning to see it. There's nothing else in the body, only that golden radiance from the tip of the head up to the toes. And through every pore of the body, it is slowly coming out. And like a thin film, it's hovering around the body. You feel its cool touches on your cheeks, on your forehead, on your hands, arms. The whole body is enveloped within that thin film of radiance. The power of God, the love of God, the peace of God. Filling the whole body. It has come out and enveloped within its arms a whole physical body. We feel a lightness, a coolness, a sense of peace, at the same time, a sense of power existing within the body and around it. It is there, even if we feel it or not. See it. It has filled the whole body, it has surrounded the whole body. See that. And we remain in that beautiful feeling and experience for a few minutes of silence.